different regions, there's still quite a lot of barriers that are being imposed by different governments, and that slows down the movement of goods.
If we had a synergy, the two economies will benefit greatly.
South Africa and Kenya in particular have got a lot to offer the world from a skilling perspective, and I think that can do and go quite a long way in terms of beginning to dampen the issues of unemployment.
The DSTV business, which is part of the MultiChoice Kenya business as well as the GoTV Kenya business, has had a tremendous impact in the country, where we have contributed about 8 billion in GDP uplift in the country.
Intra-Africa trade only accounts for 19%. 19%. If you compare to the EU, which is doing close to 70% of intra-EU trade, we have a lot of opportunities ahead of us. Let us make it happen.
It's not a zero-sum game, and I think there is room in that case for deepening collaboration.
Unlocking Africa, unlocking the opportunities, ladies and gentlemen. If it pleases Your Excellencies, Mr. Richard Ngatia, Chamber President, Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Dr. Stavros Nicolaou, Board Member, Business Unity South Africa, will present a summary of the Business Forum resolutions. Bwana Ngatia, karibu.
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm very delighted today, Your Excellencies, because this day now marks 1 year since we had a conversation with the captains of industry in South Africa, Pretoria. That was in 23rd November. And therefore today was a day for us to have a conversation, and the whole day we've been looking at ways on how we can be able to unlock South Africa, but most importantly, unlocking Africa. Your Excellencies, you have seen, because you have walked through the exhibition, the limitless opportunities in this country. Your Excellencies, we have about 110 million population in both countries. And therefore, together, we can surely be able to tap the African continental free trade area market, which is 1.3 billion market. Your Excellencies, allow me just to acknowledge captains of industries, a few who are here in the house. And I will start with Ms. Flora Mtahi, who is the chair lady of KICC. She's right here with us. We do have Mr. Anthony Mwangi, CEO of CAM, who is here with us. Thank you. Mr. Kiprono Kitoni, chairman, Nairobi Stock Exchange, is right here with us. Mr. Paul Rushidi Russo, who is the CEO of KCB Bank. Thank you very much. We do have Mr. Humphrey Muturi, Commercial Director, Equity Bank. We do have Mr. Nicholas Guibat, CEO, Mobius Motors, and Mr. Charles Mdiwa Bank. We do have Ms. Rita Kwisha, MD, Isuzu East Africa Limited, Mr. Arvinder Singh Riel, MD Toyota Kenya, and Mr. Dinesh Kolecha, who is Group CEO, Simba Colt Motors, and also Mr. Felix Chege, RSA Marketplace, and Mr. Tilo Mutai, Agri Africa Limited, among many other captains of industry who are here today. Therefore, Your Excellencies, allow me to read you through the conclusions and resolutions of the Kenya South Africa high-level business forum held at Kenyatta International Convention Center in Nairobi on 9th November 2022. The Kenya-South Africa High-Level Business Forum took place at Nairobi on 9th November 2022 on the margins of the high-level visit and brought together over 350 businesses, executives, and captains of industry from the two countries. The forum was held under the theme Unlocking Trade and Investment, Potential and Deepening Mutual Cooperation between Kenya and South Africa. 2, the forum appreciated the political goodwill expressed by the two heads of state on the win-win cooperation and facilitation of trade and investment for the mutual benefit of both countries. The forum took note of the recognition accorded to the private sector by the two governments and agreed to regularly engage in an atmosphere of mutual trust and respect. They called on the two governments to exercise this goodwill to support development of regional infrastructure projects. 3, the forum noted the importance of trade and investment as a tool for international engagement and lauded the cordial and friendly diplomatic relations that South Africa and Kenya enjoy in that regard. They called upon the governments of the two countries to work seamlessly to improve the environment for doing business in the two countries, including easing the visa regimes. And thank you very much, because today I think you shall be able to announce the good news about these visas. The forum took note of the vibrant, frictionless trade and investment relations between the two countries and called for the joint concerted efforts in increasing the volume of trade and level of investment with a view of improving livelihoods of the citizens, particularly the youth, women, and MSMEs of the two countries. 5, the forum identified the regional, continental, and international frameworks through which both countries operate in conducting trade and investment. These frameworks include the East African Customs Union, the Southern African Customs Union, and the African Continental Free Trade Area. They agreed that the AfCFTA has extended the horizon for the businesses, but the opportunities therein can only be exploited through complementarity, cooperation, and forging of strong private sector ties. 6, the forum took note of the challenges inhibiting the full exploitation of business opportunities within the two countries and called on the two governments to streamline and harmonize the regulatory frameworks on standards and sanitary and phytosanitary standards. For example, you will note that tariffs and non-tariffs barriers, example T, Your Excellency, that you saw here, it actually attracts 100% import duty. Your Excellencies, as well as to address the cost of related inputs, they called for the fast tracking of signing MOUs and mutual recognition agreements between competent authorities, Your Excellencies. Your Excellencies, I will now allow my counterpart, Mr. Stanros Narulau, who is the representative of businesses in South Africa, to continue with the conclusions.
Mr. Richard Ngatia, let me firstly acknowledge the presence of the Excellencies, respectively the Presidents of Kenya, Dr. William Ruto, and our President, our very own President, President Cyril Ramaphosa. Excellencies, honorable ministers, distinguished business colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media. It's indeed a great pleasure for me to deliver a short and brief message for and on behalf of South African business, and particularly business that is represented in this delegation on the state visit today. So as not to break the continuum of the resolutions that my colleague Richard was reading out, I'm going to continue from paragraph 7, and once completed, the good news is it only goes up to number 11, incidentally. Otherwise we can be here the whole day. So it stops at number 11, and then I will offer some closing remarks again on behalf of business and those that participated in the forum. So paragraph 7 reads as follows, and it continues from the earlier paragraphs. This forum underscored the role of communication, ICT, and IT-enabled services as a facilitator for intra-Africa trade, and called on the governments to expand the laying down of digital infrastructure and harmonization of regulatory frameworks in this sector so as to increase intra-Africa trade. Paragraph 8, the forum identified potential areas of cooperation and collaboration between the private sectors of our two countries, particularly in joint financing of infrastructure projects following the public-private partnership PPP model. These projects cut across ports, railways, roads, and energy, and provide the firm foundation for enhanced trade and investments. In this regard, ladies and gentlemen, the forum proposed the establishment of a special fund by our two governments to support preparatory work for strategic infrastructure projects that will ease project financing by the financial institutions. Paragraph 9. President, I'm sounding like a lawyer, like you are, going through all these paragraphs, but paragraph 9, the forum highlighted specific opportunities which could be harnessed for enhanced economic growth in Eastern and South Africa, including automotive and component manufacturing, agro-processing, trade in services, industrialization, and inter-trade between our two countries. Paragraph 10, the forum took note of the progress of the growth of trade volumes since our last meeting in Pretoria 12 months ago. The captains of industry therefore appreciated the importance of the forum as a platform for exchanging views and ideas of jointly working together to harness the many opportunities that exist between our two countries. Furthermore, the forum underscored the importance of cooperation and complementarity between the private sector of our two countries and the need to meet regularly to deepen these ties. Paragraph 11, which is the final para, the forum recognized the importance of agriculture and value addition in the two economies and the whole continent, and called on financial institutions to increase their lending to these sectors. In this regard, financial institutions committed to develop unique products that suit the agricultural sector. That completes the resolutions and the conclusions from the forum earlier today. I'm going to just very briefly offer some closing remarks, as I said, on behalf of South African business and all of those of my colleagues who were present in the forum. The first order of business, may I convey on behalf of South African business our congratulations to His Excellency Dr. William Ruto on your recent election, and in particular what we're excited by is business, because business always wants certainty and predictability and stability. We wish to commend you and your government for the transition that took place from the previous to the current administration. These are all very positive investment signals for us. May I also add that a key thematic during the forum, and this was punctuated throughout the entirety of the forum, is the lessons learned from COVID. Africa found itself at the back end of the queue on many and most occasions, and we recognize as business the role that we need to play to establish value chains, supply chains, manufacturing capabilities and capacities, expertise and skills on the continent. We can never ever afford ever again to be on the back foot the way we were, particularly in healthcare. So drawing from that lesson, the biggest lesson communicated during the forum was the need to view Africa as 1.3 billion people. And in fact, in a mere 20 years' time, 1 out of every 6 citizens on this planet will be an African. We need to aggregate our markets. We need to look at pooled procurement opportunities. And our simple call to our governments here today is we need to accelerate local procurement and aggregated procurement on a pooled basis for the continent across multiple sectors. That's a clarion call we'd like to put out to the 2 presidents and heads of government. Lastly, before I take my seat, we're very conscious of some of the more operational matters which we discussed at length. These are all operational matters, of course, that will move the needle in business. My colleague Richard has alluded to some of these, and I'd like to just very quickly invite the Group Chief Executive Officer of Transnet in a minute or so, just to highlight some of the supply chain and more operational issues that will move the needle. We listened very carefully to 50 days to get avocados to South Africa, and Portia's got all the answers for you now. Thanks, Portia.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, and I will be fast. So, being thrown under the bus on the avocado, I might as well explain that one of the key issues that we have to deal with is to develop feeder vessel systems on the continent. What a feeder vessel system would do, it would enable bilateral flows of cargo, so avos would be able to move from Kenya to South Africa and the other way around. But as the gentleman with the avos would tell you, we have to deal with another problem, which is phytosanitary rules and the standards of entry between the 2 countries. We actually need to get to a point where we standardize to whatever's the highest, because at present, Kenya is able to export everywhere in the world but to South Africa because of our standards, which don't allow it to come in. But on the same breath, we're not able to get berries into Kenya, coming into this country, partly because of a shortage of infrastructure. We need a lot more cold storage facilities at ports across the value chain so that we would be able to improve fundamentally trade in the agricultural sector. The other issue, which it would be quite easy to resolve, and I think it was raised if there was will, is around the multiple inspections, pre-loading and post-loading, when you offload either in South Africa or you're loading from this part into Kenya. And then lastly, which is a difficult one, I know, because Kenya is part of the the East Africa area, the common external tariff that gets charged means that you charge exactly the same tariff on South African products coming in, which makes it much more expensive. And we believe that this is an area that could be dealt with. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. That is a brief summary of the deliberations at the Business Forum today. With the gracious permission of Your Excellencies, the Cabinet Secretary for Trade, Investment and Industry Kenya, Honorable Moses Kuria, will guide the next part of the program. Waziri, karibu sana, so that you can guide us to the next part of the program. Asante.
Your Excellency, President William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, fellow cabinet secretaries, ministers from South Africa, ladies and gentlemen. Before I make brief remarks, let me take this opportunity to invite my brother, the Minister for Trade, of the Industry and Competition of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Ibrahim Patel, to make some brief remarks. Minister Patel.
His Excellency William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, members of the Kenyan and South African Cabinet, ambassadors, business executives and captains of industry representing both countries, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Ujambo, Sanibonani, good afternoon. Excellencies, we've had more than 300 business representatives who've been involved in plenary and roundtable discussions for much of today. You would have heard now from the two business representatives. They had excellent discussions and they are eager and keen to get down to doing more business with each other, to invest more, to trade more. Trade between our two countries is beginning to support the joint vision of industrialization of both countries, though much still needs to be done. Your Excellencies, South Africa exported key inputs into Kenya's industrial supply chains, including coal to power Kenyan industry, particle board used to make furniture here, steel to be transformed in Kenya, and car kits that are assembled in Kenya. Kenya is now South Africa's largest global supplier of fresh flowers. But we also recognize that the overall level of trade is not sufficient. Indeed, it went down in both 2020 and in 2021. And in particular, South African exports declined, which we look to reverse. At the same time, there's vast scope for more Kenyan products in the South African market, from the delicious teas and range of fruits to Kenyan manufactured articles. Minister Kuria and I are already working on unlocking those opportunities. Firms from both sides see opportunities to invest. There's a Kenyan investor in South Africa in a large nut plantation in macadamia nuts. PG Bison has invested in Kenya manufacturing for furniture, and Distel in beverage manufacturing. Standard Bank and MTN are investing in Kenyan infrastructure. All of this is about growth, about jobs, about trade. Trade, Your Excellencies, have been in the blood of our people for many centuries. Communities in present-day Kenya and South Africa were part of the great network of trade routes that stretch along the Swahili coast, the great trading centers of Mombasa, of Lamu, of Malindi and Gede, and this community connected with the Southern African kingdom of Mapungubwe. These trading cities also traded with the rest of the world, with China, with Europe, with the Middle East, and they connected parts of the African continent, facilitating the flow of goods among Africans in gold and salt, in beads and carvings, in ivory and gum, in metalworks and textiles. Colonialism interrupted and deeply damaged the indigenous development of African trade and caused harm to our societies that has lasted for centuries. Today, Africa has the opportunity to decisively turn the corner, and that's what the state visit is about. His Excellency President Ramaphosa, His Excellency President Ruto, leading the way to reverse the legacy of the past. And so today, we have this opportunity to hear from the two Excellencies on their vision. And as members of the respective cabinets, we've already been put to task to step up the work that we do in order to address all the challenges that have come out in the business forum, in the bilateral trade talks. And I want to end by saying that President Ramaphosa has given us a job to prioritize economic relationships with Kenya. As leader of the African Union during the COVID period, President Ramaphosa championed the idea of Africa making its own medical products, from vaccines to face masks to ventilators. As during the meetings of the G20 heads of state, he has put African development at the center of his advocacy and efforts. And next year, South Africa will chair BRICS, bringing together China, India, South Africa, Brazil, and Russia. And President Ramaphosa has set out an ambitious agenda focused on a partnership between BRICS and Africa. And that therefore means this state visit and the business forum that we've had here are really significant building blocks to giving effect to that vision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellencies. Your Excellencies, Kenya exports goods worth $38 billion to South Africa. And this is mainly primary products, cut flowers, avocados, tea, vegetables. While South Africa exports goods worth $650 million, mostly as inputs within our manufacturing. So already you can start to see the imbalance that we face. And this imbalance is also excavated by the fact that our exporters to South Africa are largely small to medium enterprises, while South African exporters are more established companies, mostly large companies. Whereas we are concerned about this imbalance, it is only part of the story. The bigger story is that Kenya and South Africa continue to lose the bigger opportunity that exists within the wider African market. We continue to trade more with the rest of the world than we trade within ourselves. Kenya and South Africa are not in any regional common tariff regime. So the low volume is not by accident. There's a reason to it. Any efforts for a bilateral solution, when we try to have a bilateral solution within each other, is facilitated by non-African countries invoking the most favored nation status. We are actually joined together more by music than by trade because of Kenyans' love for Kwaito music. Intra-Africa trade starts at 19% as composed to 70% intra-EU trade. Yet, we have a low-hanging fruit in the Africa Continental Free Trade Area with a population of 1.2 billion people and $1.4 trillion GDP. To enable our 110 million people between our two countries trade with each other and with the 1.1 billion Africans, it is important to talk to some countries to unlock the South African Custom Union so that we can kick off the guided trade mechanism that exists between ACFTA countries. And Kenya has indeed already started trading with some countries as far away as Ghana under this framework. Yet because of some of these bottlenecks, which are actually very solvable, we are unable to invoke the same to trade with our sister nation of South Africa. Even as we work on ACFTA, we have a lot to gain by activating the SACU EAC COMESA tripartite agreement, thus freeing trade among 800 million Africans. 11 countries have deposited TFTA agreements, and we need only 3 countries to deposit to make the agreement effective. Kenya and South Africa need and are going to work together to get the 3 countries out of the remaining countries that includes Tanzania, South Sudan, the DRC, Ethiopia, Eritrea, the Sudan, Libya, Tunisia, Lesotho, Mozambique, Seychelles, Comoros, Malawi, and Madagascar. Only of those 3 countries can unlock trade between 800 million people. And only one country within SACU, which I will not name in this distinguished gathering, but I have shared with our 2 excellencies, we need to do something so that indeed we start to trade one among 800 million people and secondly among the 1.2 billion people within the Africa continent. As we work under the prevailing conditions, Kenya and South Africa will not sit back. Do nothing is not an option. and we have agreed with the Minister Patel to set up a joint committee to unlock the non-tariff barriers which are hindering trade between our two nations. We had very strict instructions from our two presidents to do everything possible to look at the issues of logistics, to the issues of delays in our borders, and Kenya is actually taking the first step by establishing the first two bordered custom warehouses, one in Johannesburg and one in Pretoria, to support our SMEs so that they can be able to access the markets in a similar footing as our more established counterparts from South Africa. Kenya and South Africa will work together to build a consensus among African countries around the issue of the renewal of the AGOA, the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, with the US, and also the Strategic Trade and Investment Partnership. And we have agreed that ahead of the US-Africa Summit that is going to take place next month in Washington, D.C., we are going to rally together the other African countries that are going to persuade our colleagues within the US administration, within the Congress, that extension of AGOA beyond 2025 is an issue of absolute necessity. The SCFTA conversation is not going to be a dialogue among governments only. The private sector voice must be on the table. In this regard, Kenya is proud to announce that in partnership with Cyril Bank of South Africa, who are here today, we will host the first ever Africa Private Sector Alliance Conference in Nairobi in the first quarter of 2023 that will bring together Africa's top 50 companies in support of the ACFTA. So this is not going to be only a discussion among governments. We are working together to bring in a private sector, our big companies that have got the biggest influence within Africa, because ACFTA is not for the benefit of government. ACFTA has got its owners, and its owners are the private sector within the continent. Your Excellencies, I'm a very proud person, and I'm a very happy person today. 8 days ago, on my second day of work, I woke up in Pretoria to meet my counterpart, Minister Patel. Today, you've made us proud. The bold and brave decision that you've taken on the issue of visas for Kenyans in South Africa to South Africa can only be taken by brave men. And on behalf of our governments, our people, and our business community, I want to congratulate you, because surely fortune favors the bold. I think so we can say now, without fear of contradiction, that everyone who is in this room today can travel to South Africa on an ordinary passport without a visa, just as those who came to join us from South Africa came without a requirement for a visa. So thank you, Your Excellency, because you've made us equal and proud, and we are going to walk this journey together to actually be the leaders in the rest of the continent. Coupled with trade, we are now determined more than ever before to deepen our investment partnership by our two nations. And in this regard, we welcome our South African investors and counterparts to our PPP and Special Economic Zones investment conference, again, that will take place in the first quarter of next year, so that you can be able to showcase to interested investors like the likes of Transnet and Cyril Bank of South Africa the many opportunities that exist within our PPP and our Special Economic Zone. To drive forward this economy going forward, Kenya has taken a deliberate decision that will partner with the private sector to free up the many opportunities that do exist. The role of financial services and telecoms in fostering the free trade area in Africa is pivotal, and Kenya welcomes South Africa financial institutions to set base in our Nairobi International Financial Center that will kick off shortly, and further welcome you to join our telcos in the setup of our joint smartphone project, which is undertaken by Kenya Telcos, and we have extended this invitation to South African telcos like MTN and Vodacom, so that we can continue mobile integration so that these are very important elements of fueling trade. And as we do so, we must also look at the issue of interoperability of our mobile money, because Kenya is a market leader using our M-Pesa. I look forward to going to South Africa and on an MTN, on a Vodacom network, being able to access money from my M-Pesa balance as a way of fueling Africa trade. Your Excellencies, the future of our continent lies in free flow of trade and investment. Kenya and South Africa have a cardinal role to play in this regard. We are the firstborns of free trade in Africa, and that comes with extra responsibility. We are equal to the task, and we are committed to this. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And now it is my distinguished pleasure to ask that we may be upstanding as I welcome the President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency William Ruto, to make his remarks and invite his guest, President Cyril Ramaphosa. Thank you very much.
Please, let's take our seats. Thank you very much. Your Excellency, President Cyril Ramaphosa of the Great Republic of South Africa, distinguished ministers who are here, captains of industry, friends, good evening. First, let me take this opportunity on behalf of the government and the people of Kenya to welcome our friends, the business community from South Africa to Kenya, and to let you know that while you are in Kenya, count yourselves to be home away from home. You are most welcome to Kenya. This morning, I had extensive discussions with my elder brother, President Ramaphosa, and his team, and I want to thank His Excellency the President for delivering the good news to the business community and to the people of our two countries, making it possible for us to be able to travel, to be able to visit, to be able to do business, and to be able to work together in an environment that has little hurdles and that we have to jump little hoops to be able to get to the other side. Thank you very much, Mr. President. On behalf of the people and government of Kenya, we appreciate your gesture, your leadership, and your personal intervention in making sure that our officials are aligned so that we can work together. I just have two things to say to remind us. And I speak to the South African business delegation the way I do to our Kenyan business people. We are living in a continent that we have 1.2 billion people, with a GDP of $2.7 trillion. We have the youngest population in the globe. This is a continent of great possibilities and opportunities. These opportunities and possibilities are hindered by bureaucracy, red tape, regulations, and many things that impede our collective progress. I told our teams earlier, we cannot share poverty, but we can share wealth. And we need to work together to create wealth.
And we must eliminate the barriers, the hurdles. Our borders must not be walls. We must turn our borders from being hurdles to being bridges. We must turn our borders from being hurdles to being facilitative, so that we can do trade, we can do business, we can make investment, and we can move people, goods, and services freely in our continent. Kenya and South Africa are struggling to export to Europe and all manner of places. And yet, there exists market and opportunity in Kenya and South Africa. Something must be wrong with us, honestly. We cannot continue this. Europe, you've heard, is trading at 70% of trade, intra-European trade. Africa is at 19%. What a shame. And we still want to have a conversation about, oh, you know, we have this regulation, and you know, we have this other regulation, and you have to wait. I mean, surely, good people. Sometimes, even when we want to make decisions at the policy level, the business people are the ones holding us back. Or, you know, that guy is going to take over my market, and the other guy is going to take over my market. Please, let us have one big market. Forget about your small market. Let us work together. Instead of selling to a few people in Kenya or selling to a few people in South Africa, let us sell to the many people in Africa by tearing down the borders that limit our opportunity to work together. I want to thank President Ramaphosa for working with my team and myself to eliminate some of the barriers that we have. Our ministers have instructions that South Africa and Kenya are in one neighborhood, and South Africa and Kenya hold the potential of unleashing the opportunities in our continent by working together. Combining the experience, know-how of the South African people with the agility and the innovation of the Kenyan people, the limit is the sky. There is no limit. We have limitless opportunity by working together. I want to promise my good brothers from South Africa that Kenya is open for business and Kenya wants to work with you. We have agreed on many of the other issues, and I want to thank our officials for being supportive of the positions that we have taken. Eliminating the barrier on meat exports. Why on earth would we ban South African meat from coming to Kenya, or Kenyan meat from going to South Africa? Why? There is absolutely no reason. And listening to the good lady who came to speak to us about these barriers, I never heard her say, this is very difficult. She kept on saying, this is easy, this is simple, we're going to do this. So I am yet to come across anything that is so difficult. I have only heard about things that are simple and easy. The question I ask myself, easy and simple, why are you not doing them? Let's just do this easy and simple things and get us working and get us doing business. let me finally say the following. We have huge opportunities in Kenya for South African private sector and business entities. We have investments, we have huge opportunities in our housing and settlement plan. We are short of 2 million houses. My good brother, President Ramaphosa, told me you have already built 4 million houses in South Africa. We want to build at least 200,000 houses every year. And we want South African companies to come and work with us. Bring your technology, bring your investment. We are going to give you the land. We are going to build the infrastructure for you. We're going to make sure there is a sewer line, there is a road, there is electricity, there is water. And when you complete those houses, we are going to buy them from you. As soon as you complete, you hand over the keys to us. We pay you, you go to the next project as we look for mortgage for our citizens. You have opportunity. You have opportunity in our water harvesting program. We have decided that we are going to work with the private sector to deliver on our water harvesting program. We have already lined up the first 100 big dams, which we want to build using a water purchase agreement instrument. Build the dam, we will buy the water from you, and we will underwrite the purchase of that water from any of the investors, from our good friends from South Africa. There is tremendous opportunity for you to co-invest with us and for us to give you opportunity to earn good runs, good shillings, maybe even dollars from our working together under the private-public partnership window. We have sound South African investments in Kenya, from DSTV to Standard Bank and all the other operations. And I was very pleased to see the kind of partnerships in the various companies that we went through here in the grounds down outside here between South Africa and Kenya, from textile to furniture to manufacturing to fintech companies. And I want to tell you that South Africa and Kenya hold the key to unlocking the possibilities in the continent of Africa. We need to work together. And between me and my elder brother, I want to promise you that we are going to open doors for you, not just in Kenya, not just in South Africa, but in the continent of Africa, so that we can leverage on your expertise, on the resources you have to open our continent and to unlock the potential of wealth in the continent of Africa. I want to persuade you that this is an opportunity like no other. This is an opportunity of our lifetime. And even in the face of the challenges that we face with climate change and all the other attendant drought, floods, famine, we can still position our continent not just as a victim of climate change, but actually as a place where we can play a role in resolving the challenge of climate change. We have enormous resources in the green energy space. We have huge opportunities from our young people and the natural resources we have in this continent. The opportunity is beckoning for us to work together, and it starts somewhere. And I want to pledge that it starts with South Africa and Kenya. Thank you very much for listening to me. it is now my very humble duty to request His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa to be able to make his remarks. Mr. President.
Thank you. Let's be seated, please. Program Director, Your Excellency, President Dr. William Ruto, ministers from both our countries, South Africa and Kenya, business leaders who are here present with us. I'd like to convey my joy and my special thanks to you, my dear brother, for inviting myself and my delegation to come to your beautiful country, but more especially as your first state visitor guest during the first part of your presidency. Thank you very much. You've given us more than a warm welcome to Kenya. Having been to Kenya a number of times, this has been a very special visit, largely because of the manner in which the discussions between our two delegations have really gone to great success and to new heights. Your country is not only known for the stunning beauty of this great country, but it is also known as a powerful economy in East Africa. And we see South Africa and Kenya having a symbiotic relationship in a number of areas. There's so much that we have in common, that we share. Our value system is very similar. The principles that we uphold, very, very similar. We're democratic, and you are too. You uphold human rights, so do we. Your governance structures, institutions, and processes are really outstanding. So there's much that binds us together as the two countries, and we are overjoyed with that. And our visit to you comes at a time when the world is facing enormous challenges, and we've just been recovering from COVID-19, and that too was an enormous challenge. I just want to speak on some of the issues and reiterate and endorse what President Ruto has just been saying, particularly about the enormous opportunities that we have on our continent in relation to our positioning in the world, in relation to our population as a continent, and in relation to the youthfulness of our population, and also get us to look back where we've come from. We're a continent that is quite resilient. Sometimes we browbeat ourselves into helplessness and submission and all that. I've always enjoyed President Museveni's take on our continent when he says, we are a continent of resilient people because we are survivors. We survived the most brutal form of punishment that was ever exerted on a people in the history of the world, colonialism. And they sought to wipe us out and to destroy us, but we survived. And we've emerged as independent countries, proud of our identities and surging forward. I mentioned COVID advisedly because as the world was gripped by this massive pandemic, as a continent we were able to distinguish ourselves in the manner in which we approached and we addressed COVID. We were the only continent that during this horrific pandemic were able to unite and to act as a continent in an integrated manner. If you ever want to talk about African integration, I saw it with my own eyes during COVID, when right at the outset of the pandemic, we developed a strategy, an African strategy of how to address and to approach COVID. And no other continent that I know of, even to a little extent Europe, was able to develop as good a strategy as we did. And that spoke to our integration. And we lived up to the strength, the resilient strength, and possibly hidden strength that we have as Africans who have survived a whole lot of other terrible things that were done to us as a people. And having developed that strategy, when the world was at sixes and ninths, trying to get personal protective equipment, and when all countries were running all over the world, overpaying for PPEs and what have you, going to suppliers all over the world, China, Europe, and being overcharged. We united once again and established an African medicine supplies platform where we all got together and started buying our PPEs at reduced prices. That too was phenomenal, and we did it because we became integrated and united. Whilst that was going ahead, the era of vaccines came to the fore, and once again we united and put together a vaccine acquisition entity. No other continent put up a vaccine acquisition entity like we did, and we were able to procure and amass vaccines in the most effective manner. And that to me showed us that working together, precisely the point that President Ruto was making, we are able to achieve enormous feats and demonstrate to the world. And in fact, the world was quite surprised at the manner in which Africa was able to unite and address a pandemic like this. So if we work together, we're able to achieve much more than what we imagine. President Ruto speaks about climate change, where now our countries are being ravaged by climate change, droughts, floods, fires, pests, you name it. And it is this that, as President Ruto is saying, that we need to unite and work together and address even climate change. And out of it all, we should be able to see new opportunities, as President Ruto was saying, new industries, new sectors, and make sure that we enter those new sectors and excel in the most outstanding manner. Having just returned from COP27, held on African soil in Egypt, where the stark realities about climate change were demonstrated to all, as Africa and as African leaders, we made it very clear that our countries cannot afford a further rise in global temperatures, but we also collectively called upon the more developed economy countries to honor their commitments. And they have been making commitments over and over and over again. In COP21 in Paris, they made a commitment that they would be investing $100 billion of making available $100 billion per year, they have not met those commitments. Now, collectively, a number of African leaders were there, all of us, one message, several voices, we said, we want them to address the loss and the damage that our countries are suffering from. And once again, Africa is showing a great deal of integration of thought, effort, and articulation by saying to the world, we want you to address loss and damage. We are hardly responsible as a continent to the damage that has been done and continues to be done to climate, and we therefore want you, yes, to pay up. It is about time that the money is brought to Africa to enable us to address the damage they have caused to our climate. So, being here at this business forum, for me, and as President Ruto was saying, based on what we've been able to do in the past and the positions that we've collectively taken as a continent, it brings forward an important opportunity and message about what the business community should be able to do, working together with your various governments for us to search forward to address the issue of integration. It is about time that indeed Africa is more integrated. When we look, as President Ruto correctly said, when we look at other continents, especially Europe, their intertrade is up to 70%, and ours is a paltry less than 20%. And when you go into the markets that we have, as you go into our markets and when you pick up goods, I often begin looking where these goods are made. And I get appalled when I realize that goods that we could have made ourselves on the continent are imported from other environments in the world. And this is what we now need to live up to and address the issues that hold us back. What is it that holds us back? And here I speak to us as business and also as government. What's holding us back seems to be fear. Fear of the unknown, where we almost fear our own shadows and are worried about surging forward, confronting those shadows. Today, we were able to announce, for instance, that there should be visa-free travel between South Africa and Kenya, by Kenyans going to South Africa, that you no longer need to have a visa. Now, I'm able to say what has always held us back, I was saying to President Ruto, is a fear. We possibly, as well, South Africans, we were afraid that by opening up the doors of South Africa to Kenyans, we are afraid that in will come all those undesirable elements that just want to transgress our immigration laws and so forth. And today we were able to say, let's ditch the fear. Let's open up South Africa to Kenyans to come to South Africa so that you can come and do what? And trade with us. You can come and do business. You can come and be tourists. Yes, you can come and learn. Many young people want to come to our learning institutions. Many people who want to come, yes, to our hospitals. There are many people who do want to come and visit their friends and relatives. And today, that's precisely what we've done. Got rid of that fear and to enable us to triumph over fear. And of course, we've reached a very good agreement with Kenya that we are going to monitor this process. We are going to be hands-on, and it's not going to be a loophole that we have opened for those who want to transgress immigration regulations and who want to come to slip into South Africa without proper papers and so forth. And Kenya has been bold enough, getting rid of its own fear. It's been bold enough to say that there will be a return policy. Those who have gone to South Africa wrongly will be returned back to Kenya. And that is very positive, and we welcome that. So the reciprocal nature of our dealings have been powerful. But I must say, President Ruto is action-oriented. There were two of us sitting together, and he looked me straight in the eye, and he said, President, this has to be addressed between the two of us. Let us take the leap. And he is very good at he looks very fit, and I think maybe, I don't know whether he was a boxer or whatever, and was able to twist my arm. And with that, we were able to agree that this is the new dispensation that we are introducing. It's courageous, it's bold, and it is aimed at improving the relationship between Kenya and South Africa and build that strong foundation. But more than that, it also builds trust, not only between the two of us as leaders, but also builds trust between the two nations, that we are two peoples on our beloved continent who can trust each other to do the right things, and who can trust each other to trade with each other at a diplomatic level, at a political level. There is a great deal of trust that we can rely on. The other thing that holds us back is bureaucracy and a regulatory environment, which President has already spoken to. And we already identified a number of things that we can do to unlock the way we deal with each other and unlock unnecessary bureaucracy, red tape, and unnecessary regulatory strictures. And my sister, CEO of Transnet, was articulating that very clearly, that sometimes we have these photosanitary rules that only apply one way and so forth, and we do need to have great standards that we can all apply to or conform with. The important thing, though, that was clearly demonstrated today, we've got a really good team of ministers and officials who have demonstrated that they are willing to do what is necessary. And Minister or Secretary of Trade here in Kenya, on his very second day in the job, immediately came to sleep in South Africa to begin the process of unlocking some of the constraints and the strictures, and sit down with Minister Patel, and they've made enormous progress just in a short space of time. So I really applaud them, and the same applies to our other ministers. So we've got ministers on both sides who are determined to improve the relationship between South Africa and Kenya, so that we are able to capture the opportunities that lie ahead. And that behoves well for the future relationship between us as we open channels for you all as business people. Now, I'm particularly pleased that there are so many of you who have come here from both South Africa and here, and we hope that you will be able to move from the contacts that you're making to contract, because the opportunities are many. They are even unimaginable. And all we want to do is to open those opportunities, because our continent is hungry. It has a great appetite for industrialization, and it has a great appetite for new investment in factories, in logistics systems, and I'm very pleased to hear that Kenya is going to set up warehouses in South Africa for Kenyan goods that must come into South Africa. We welcome that and we are open to that. Before coming into this meeting hall, President Ruto was ushering me through the various stalls that were here, and he's a very good salesman. He was, all morning he's been trying to sell me Kenyan tea, Kenyan coffee, avocados and all that. So as you see me, I'm full of tea as it is now, of Kenyan tea. So the opportunities are enormous. And as he was speaking up the opportunities, I want to reiterate that indeed we just see great opportunities, and opportunities that straddle between the private sector, opportunities as well as the public sector, opening up the Kenyan market for both our state-owned enterprises as well as our private sector. But similarly, President Ruto, I'd like to say we want to open up also South Africa's market for your goods and services, and indeed for your public sector companies that can come to South Africa to do business. So in the end, it should be a two-way process. I was also particularly pleased to see a stall where medical products are also manufactured here, which speaks to precisely what I was saying earlier, where we were able as the African continent to push the world to get us to manufacture our own vaccines and to push the world, the WTO and so on, where we said we want to be able to manufacture therapeutics and diagnostics as well. So it was a joy to see a company here in Kenya that is already making that. We've had enormous breakthroughs. And as we make these breakthroughs as government, we are saying we want the private sector to follow in suit so that you notice and see all these opportunities that can be capitalized on. Now, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is another great opportunity. Despite the little hurdles that are in place where we are supposed to get a few countries to unlock the full-blown implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and we are going to do that. In our own neighborhood, we have to get Lesotho to come along, the country that you didn't want to mention. We will do so. And in your own region, you've got others. Now, imagine the two economies. And let's not forget that Kenya and South Africa, Kenya is a very big and vibrant economy in East Africa. And South Africa is a big and vibrant economy. So we link the two regions in the world. And I've often said we link with Nigeria, we link with North Africa, and the continent is our playground. And that's exactly where we want you as businesses to play. So the quest that we have and the dream that we have, and imagine we also started it during COVID, but we also immediately started saying we need to scale up. We can't be running after a number of countries around the world and say when we are sick, we want you to supply us with vaccines and syringes and therapeutics and so on. We've got to make our own. This is Africa's century, and we must capture it and demonstrate to ourselves and those who will come after us that we did take up the opportunities. And now we've already demonstrated that we can. We can make vaccines here on the continent. The agreement that we got the world to start focusing on is to say There are a number of countries on the continent. South Africa is one, Kenya is one, yes, Rwanda is one, Senegal is another, Egypt is another. We can make our own vaccines. Just open up the regulatory strictures in the world. And that we have achieved. We're now pushing for therapeutics and diagnostics. And I think we will succeed if you, as business people, demonstrate to us that you are willing, ready, and prepared to take up all these opportunities that we're making. They're opening up. So that's the question of fear. We must get rid of the fear that we have, and the regulatory strictures we will take care of. So the opportunities are enormous, and I'm really glad that we can have this opportunity for me and President Ruto to come and hear your report. It's a very good report. It's a positive report and forward-looking. It enables us to unlock opportunities for trade between our two countries, and we will want to take further steps to increase overall trade. We already heard that trade can scale $1 billion, and it can go even, between our two countries, it can go even further. And when we talk about trade, when I talk about trade, I'm not talking about one way. It's not only South Africa to sell. It's for Kenya to sell. I want to see Kenyan tea and coffee in South Africa as well. So we want to open our market, and we also want to open up investments. On the public side, President Ruto has already said, in housing, where, yes, we have developed a really good and special skill. We've built 4 million houses, and you need 2 million. We can work together. But in working together, we want also to build capacity to transfer the skills and the capabilities, so that as Kenya, you can also come and build houses in South Africa in time to come. So it has to be seen as a two-way process. So if we can look at all this in a broad sense, we will find that the sky indeed is the limit. We've got endless opportunities. And on our side, we want you as the business community not to tire, to keep raising the issues that are important to you. You've got great access. President Ruto is accessible to the business community here. And as we were going around the stalls, nearly everyone was focusing more attention on President Ruto, forgetting that I'm a buyer of Kenyan goods. They were focused, and I said, no, that is a good sign, because they look at him to unlock opportunities. Way back home, they look at me also to unlock opportunities. So both of us are accessible, are able to see how we can open up the opportunities and support you. So what I can say as I conclude is that we are here to support, to egg you on. Similarly, you as business people, take up the opportunity of having two governments that support you, two governments that want you to succeed, and two governments that are hungry, that are determined to grow our two economies. These are two strong economies in two parts of our continent. Let us work together. And that is what has brought me and my delegation here. And I'd like to thank you for being here and also for reporting to us as well as you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. You may be seated. I wish to most humbly request Your Excellencies to I invite you here for a photo opportunity. The first photo with Your Excellencies here on stage. For the second photo, Your Excellencies will be joined by the Cabinet. Welcome, Your Excellencies. The second photo, you'll be joined by the Cabinet Secretaries responsible for foreign affairs and trade for the two countries. So Cabinet Secretaries Moses, Cabinet Secretary